Imagine a place designed to be escape-proof, a high-security prisoner of war camp, deep in the heart of Nazi Germany, holding thousands of Allied airmen. The Germans called it Stalag Luft III. They built the prisoner huts on stilts to expose any tunnels. They chose a location with bright, sandy soil that would be impossible to hide. Seismographs were buried underground to detect digging. To them, it wasn't just a prison, it was a fortress. But for the men inside, walls and wires were just a challenge. And in 1943, they decided to prove that no fortress was unbreakable. For Allied airmen, capture wasn't the end of the fight. Their military code demanded they try to escape, to harass the enemy, to divert German resources from the front lines. It wasn't just about freedom. It was a continuation of the war by other means. And inside Stalag Luft III, this duty became an obsession. A core group of prisoners led by Royal Air Force Squadron leader Roger Bushell, known as Big X, formed an escape committee. Their plan wasn't just daring, it was audacious. They wouldn't dig one tunnel, they would dig 3. They codenamed them Tom, Dick, and Harry. The logic was simple, but brilliant. If the Germans discovered one tunnel, they'd assume that was the only escape attempt. They'd relax their guard, never suspecting that 2 other massive digging operations were still underway. The sheer scale of this plan was unprecedented. It would require the coordination of over 600 prisoners, each with a specific role, from diggers and engineers to forgers and lookouts. This wasn't just an escape, it was an underground army, operating right under the noses of their captors. The engineering required was mind-boggling. The tunnels had to be dug nearly 30 feet deep to bypass the seismographs. They were tiny, just 2 feet by 2 feet, claustrophobic and dark. To prevent collapses in the soft sand, the prisoners had to shore up every inch of the tunnels. Where did they get the wood? They systematically dismantled their own beds. Over 4,000 bedboards were stolen and repurposed. The men slept on sagging mattresses supported by single strings, hoping the guards wouldn't notice. Then there was the problem of air. Deep underground, the diggers would quickly suffocate without a fresh supply. So, the prisoners, using old Klim milk tins, hockey sticks, and scraps of leather, built a sophisticated air pump. This hand-operated contraption pushed fresh air through a pipeline made of more interconnected tin cans, allowing the diggers to breathe and work for hours. To see in the suffocating darkness, they even tapped into the camp's own electrical grid, running a stolen wire down the length of the tunnels to power a string of light bulbs. It was a subterranean marvel of ingenuity. But the biggest challenge of all was the dirt. Each tunnel would displace tons upon tons of bright, telltale yellow sand. Hiding it was a monumental task. This is where the penguins came in. These were prisoners designated to dispose of the sand. They'd fill long, thin sacks made from socks or towels and tuck them inside their trousers. Then, they'd waddle out into the exercise yard, pull a release cord, and let the sand trickle out from the bottom of their pant legs, scuffing it into the darker topsoil with their feet. It was an incredibly tense job. A single slip, a broken sack, or a suspicious guard could expose the entire operation. Every day, the penguins risked their lives, walking a tightrope between freedom and discovery. The work continued for nearly a year. An intricate system of lookouts, codenamed Stooges, was set up. They used subtle signals, a book placed in a window, a towel hung on a line to warn the diggers of approaching guards. If a gopher call went out, everything would stop. Trapdoors, perfectly camouflaged to look like part of the floor, would be sealed. Within seconds, all evidence of the massive industrial operation happening below would vanish. There were setbacks. The entrance to Tom was discovered by a vigilant guard during a search. The Germans were through. They dynamited the tunnel, and just as the prisoners had hoped, became complacent, assuming the escape threat was over. The prisoners then strategically used Dick as a storage space for dirt and supplies from the main effort, which was now focused entirely on Harry. The pressure was immense. Winter was setting in, and the deadline was looming. Finally, in March 1944, Harry was complete. It stretched over 330 feet, an incredible feat of secret construction. The escape committee selected 200 men for the breakout. They had forged papers, civilian clothes tailored from uniforms, compasses made from melted phonograph records, and magnetized sewing needles. On the cold, moonless night of March 24th, the operation began. The first man broke through to the surface, ready to breathe the air of freedom, but what he saw was a disaster. The calculations were off. The tunnel didn't emerge in the safety of the nearby forest as planned. It was short. It surfaced in an open patch of ground, perilously close to a guard tower. The men would be completely exposed as they exited. A rope was sent back down the tunnel to signal when the coast was clear, but it slowed the process dramatically. Instead of one man escaping every minute, it was taking far longer. Tension mounted in the cramped tunnel as the men waited. Despite the risk, they pushed forward. One by one, men crawled out into the freezing night and sprinted for the tree line. But the delay was costly. Around 5 a.m., a guard on patrol noticed footprints in the snow leading from a hole in the ground. He raised the alarm. Chaos erupted. In the tunnel, the men heard the shouts and gunshots. The escape was over. Of the 200 men who had planned to escape, only 76 had made it out. The largest manhunt of the war began. The Gestapo and German military scoured the countryside. In the end, only 3 of the escapees made it to complete freedom: to Norwegians, who stowed away on a ship to Sweden, and a Dutchman who reached Spain with the help of the French resistance. The rest were recaptured. And this is where the story turns from one of daring to one of tragedy. Adolf Hitler was personally enraged by the escape. It was a massive humiliation for the Third Reich. In a brutal act of vengeance, he ordered 50 of the recaptured officers to be executed by the Gestapo. This was a flagrant violation of the Geneva Convention, a war crime that would later be prosecuted at the Nuremberg trials. The men were taken in small groups, driven to remote locations, and shot. Their death sent a shockwave of horror through the Allied nations. The Great Escape is remembered not just for the 76 who broke out, but for the 50 who paid the ultimate price. Their story isn't just about digging tunnels. It's about the unyielding power of the human spirit. It's a testament to the idea that even in the darkest of places, surrounded by barbed wire and despair, you can still fight for what you believe in. The ingenuity, the camaraderie, and the raw courage of those men in Stalag Luft III became a powerful symbol of defiance against tyranny. Tom, Dick, and Harry were more than just tunnels dug in the sand. They were channels of hope, and their legacy reminds us that true freedom is a state of mind that can never be imprisoned. If you found this story of courage and ingenuity as incredible as I did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. There's so many more amazing stories from history to share with you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.